Hey everyone, welcome to video 2 of how to set up gradebooks in PowerSchools for your Summit courses. We've already talked about the traditional grade calculation for your entire gradebook and also how to set up the categories within your gradebook. So if you missed that, make sure to go back and look at video 1. For video 2, we're going to look at how to create our traditional grade calculations and also how to set up the gradebook, or PowerSchools calls it score sheets. So let's dive into how to do those two things. So when creating the traditional grade calculations in PowerSchools, we are going to mimic what Summit does. So we're going to weight our projects as 70%, we're going to weight our PFAs as 21%, we're going to weight our AFAs as 9%, and we're going to weight our honors credit as 0.0001, which essentially in PowerSchools reacts as a 0%, but we have to give it some value so that it can exist in PowerSchools. But this will not affect students' grades. All right, let's go take a look at how we actually do this. So when we were last speaking, we were in the category view of PowerTeacher Pro. Now we're going to go to Settings, and we're going to select Traditional Grade Calculations. So go to Settings and click on Traditional Grade Calculations, and it will take you to this view. So let's take a look at each of these. So F1 is your student's final grade, the 100% of all of their scoring. You don't need to do anything here, but this is what I was talking about before, where we see that S1 is weighted as 80% and E1 is weighted as 20%. Please do not change anything. If you're teaching a Summit class, this is what it should look like. I just wanted to make sure that you understood what this is. So we leave that as is. But what we are going to play around with is this S1 category weight. Again, we will not do anything with S2. It's dead to you. You don't want to talk to it anymore. No, bye. We're just messing with S1. So when we click on the pen or pencil, this is what will appear. Some of y'all might already have projects, PFAs, and AFAs set up. I don't believe anyone has honors credit set up. So it might look a little bit like this. It might look nothing like this. So let's talk about how we get it to look like this. First off, if you have any categories in here that don't belong, you can get rid of them by clicking this delete button, and it will disappear and you can't get it back. So make sure, well, you can, but it just takes a little work. So make sure you only click on that negative button if you really want it to go away. Now, if you want to add a new one, you click on this plus sign and it gives you a new row to fill out. So you want to make sure that you select category weights every single time. Now, if you want to create a project one or projects one, you would go to your green project and you would enter in 70%, just like we see here. If you want to create your PFA Power Focus, you go to PFA Power Focus, the purple one, and you would enter in 21%, as we see here. If you want to do your AFA Additional Focus, you would select this black option and you'd make it 9% right here. Now the one that I do want to create is the one I just deleted. I want to create my honors credit category. So I create honors credit here, and I'm going to change this to 0.0001. And that essentially changes this to a 0%, so it does not affect our students' grades, but as you'll see later on, it gives us an ability to really easily communicate to families if their student is on track to earn honors credit. And so ultimately, this is how your S1 reporting term should look like. Category weights across the board for type. For attribute, you want project, PFA, AFA, honors credit. And we're trying to stay consistent with the colors just for kind of like ease. So green, purple, black, blue. For your weights, it will be 70, 21, 9, and 0.0001. And then the percentages that translates to is right here. And so that is what you want your S1 to look like. And we'll save. If you're curious about S2, these things do exist here, but you will not use it. Please do not mess with S2. It has no use to you. And for E1, this is already set up for you. This is your final exam grade. You don't need to mess with this. You can leave it alone. So in summary, you don't need to do anything with F1. You don't need to do anything with S2. You don't need to do anything with E1. The only thing you need to change is your S1, and it should look like this. Awesome. So let's go ahead and move on to our next thing. All right, so next we're going to talk about how to actually set up your gradebook itself, what we traditionally think of as the gradebook, or what Power Schools calls the score sheet. And this is essentially where you enter all of your grades. Now, I have a ton of information in writing that you can follow along with, but I'm not going to read this to you. I'm just going to explain it. So let's go take a look at how we set this up. So the way that we get to our score sheets is you go back to this A+ grading and you click on score sheet. And it takes us here. So this is my class, and I'm going to set up my score sheet so that it mimics what Summit has. The reason why we're doing this is essentially to create a super simplified version of what Summit shows that families can easily understand and gather information from. So how are we going to do that? So where you want to go is up here to this plus symbol in the top right and click on it. And this time you want to select assignment. To save yourself some time, make sure to use this drop-down box for select classes and select all of the classes that are Summit classes for you. That way you only have to do this once as opposed to over and over and over and over again for all of your classes. So save yourself some time and select all the classes that you would like for what we're about to do to populate for. Now, under assignment name, we are creating our project. So we're going to do one.project or projects if you like to make it plural. And it helps keep your gradebook tidy if you do the 1 point, so that this will be listed first. And then here under select category, we're going to select the category that we set up in our last video. So you'll select project. The date you can leave alone. What matters is that it's a semester 1 date. So if you just use today's date, you'll never have to change it. You'll never have to update it. You can just leave it as is. And then you want to keep points, but you want to change the number of points to 100. And it's important that you keep this box checked because you do in fact want this to calculate into their final grade. So a quick recap, make sure to select the classes that you want this to appear for, so all of your Summit classes. Name it one.projects or project. Select your green project category. Leave it as today's date, a semester 1 date. Leave this or make this points. Make it 100 points and leave this checked. And then you can save and close. And so now I have the projects set up here. So how do we grade these projects? Let's take a moment to stop and talk about how on earth we grade these things. So when we go here, I have a view of how we see our students' scores in Summit. So when you log into Summit and select a class and select students, you can see how all of your students are doing in your course. And when we're looking for the grade that we want to pull for projects, where do we pull it from? We do not pull it from here. That's a mistake I've made, a lot of people have made. This is the student's final grade. That's not what we want to pull from. Where we want to pull from is right here, the COG skill average. That is the score that specifically relates to the project score that the student has in your class. So for instance here, this is off track and it's blank. That means the student has turned in nothing. So they currently have a 0. This student has turned in their work and they received a 100% on it. Well done. This student is off track. No score, they have a 0. This student, it doesn't say off track and there's no score here. That just means they haven't done anything. So you just leave them alone, don't enter a grade. Oops. This student has a 93. This student has no score, you'd leave them alone. This student has 100. So these are the scores that you would enter in for the student. So I'm going to use this student as my example. They have a 93 skill average. So I'm going to go over here and I'd enter in 93 and save. And that is how I enter my project scores. So you take the number that's under cog skill average and you translate it to projects here. And that's how we grade here. Now with this projects column, this is where our deadline policy, that -5 deadline policy, comes into action. So for instance, my lovely student right here currently has a 0. So if I entered that, I'd put the 0 here. I'd mark it as missing to indicate that they have missing work. That's why they have a 0. And then I would add a comment. Student has not turned in their history of cheese puffs video. They have until the end of quarter 1 to submit this work. At that time, it will become permanently missing and result in a permanent -5 from their final grade. And so I'm going to be entering multiple grades here. What I would do is I would copy this, and for every student who did not do the assignment, I would just paste this to save myself some time. Now say we've gone into our next project, and my dearest student, this kid's awesome. Definitely would not be the case with them. But say this student didn't turn in their next project, and so it stays a 0. There might be some other score that's low. I wouldn't delete this. I would just add to my list. Student has not turned in, and I would just add in the next thing they haven't turned in, and I would maintain this list for the entire year, as it's my way of tracking how many points should be deducted from their grade. Do not delete anything in the comments until they have turned it in. So say my student, so say they're missing this, has not turned in their, I don't know, Bob project. Just making stuff up, guys. Bob project, they have until the end of quarter 1, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so say I have this here. But say, even though they didn't turn in their Bob project, they did turn in their history of cheese puffs video. Great job, child. So that means I can get rid of this. And they now just have -5 missing from their final grade as opposed to -10. So really quickly, if you're curious about how to do the -5, you'd go over here to grade. So say this dear student right here also did not turn in their Bob project. It was a tough one. So they did not turn in their Bob project. I hit missing and comment, and I need to take away a -5. You manually do that by clicking on grade. So they have a 93, and I would take away 5, making this an 88, and saving. And that's how you can manually take away the -5. But say all of my students suddenly realize that they really get Bob, and they all do their project. I would get to delete this and take away the missing. And when I go here, I can just click on this recycle button and it restores it to the 93. Now say this student does not turn in their Bob project, and then it's quarter 2. So they've lost their opportunity to create a project about Bob. I would leave the comment. I would leave the -5. I can't take -5 from 0, but if I had, I'd leave the -5. But I'd remove the missing because they don't have any work missing in quarter 2. So the purpose of the missing button is to indicate if there's any missing work that can actually still be completed. So if it's quarter 1 and they can still complete their Bob project, I'll leave it. But if it's quarter 2 and they haven't done their Bob project, I take it away because it's quarter 2. They don't have any work missing for quarter 2, but they do still get the -5 and the comment so that we can track what's going on and so that their grade is accurate. All right, I'm going to pause and hop over to video 3 to continue our conversation. See you there.